started. Zugby is the founder and director of WIAM, the Palestinian Conflict Transformation Center located in Bethlehem, Palestine. WIAM is the Arabic word meaning cordial relationships. The WIAM Center is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Its work includes a trauma coping program for children, leadership training for women, and nonviolence education programs. Zugby has been involved with the Mennonite Central Committee in Jerusalem, the World Council of Churches, the International Fellowship of Reconciliation, and the Arab Partnership of Conflict Prevention. He has also served on the Bethlehem City Council. Janet and I have known Zugby's wife, Elaine, since the 1970s when we attended the Prince of Peace Church of the Brethren in South Bend with Elaine and her family. Zugby and Elaine are the parents of 4 children. Rafik, who graduated from Purdue in 2020, Lucas and Tarek, who's on our screen now, who graduated from Manchester in 2017 and 2015, and Marcel, who graduated from Goshen in 2013. The older children have also earned master's and doctorate degrees. Elaine told us that all 4 children earned degrees in 2020, but because of COVID, there were no ceremonies. So please join me in welcoming Zugby and Tarek to Sojourners.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having us here. I know that Zugby is having some connectivity issues, but hopefully will be able to join with us once he's able to reconnect. So first of all, thank you for creating this space and for having us with you this morning. I just want to give you a brief background on WIAM and its work before maybe diving into the current context and realities of the challenges that we face as Palestinians, and specifically as Palestinians in the Bethlehem area. So as mentioned, WIAM has been in operation now for almost 30 years. It began in 1994. 1994, 1993, 1995 was a very important part or time in Palestinian history when we had the Oslo Accords. It was a time when there was a great deal of hope, and there were many organizations dedicated to finding a political, quote unquote, solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So because of this, there were many organizations, local, national, and international, dedicated to finding a resolution, political one, while at the same time, years of occupation had created rifts within the Palestinian community and population. And so I don't know how many people have been to the land and have been able to see the facts on the grounds, but some of these rifts include the wall, they include the settlements, they include the stresses of living under occupation, of having a legal system in which not all people are equal, or at least equal in the same way. And so throughout this time, we saw a huge rise in violence. We saw a huge rise in conflict. And the Palestinian society was slowly fragmenting and falling apart. So WIAM decided that it was time, while we are waiting for a political resolution, while we're waiting for a just solution to fall on the ground or to become reality, we needed to have some efforts within the Palestinian greater society to be able to build cohesion again and work towards civil justice and civil peace. And so WIAM established its first Sulha program, which is the Arabic tradition of Palestinian conflict resolution and mediation, mixing that with Western methodologies of conflict mediation, and then provided this service to society. Where there was a conflict, people were able to call the WIAM hotline, and then we were able to send teams of mediators, experts in the field of mediation, to go and mediate these conflicts, working through citizen diplomacy, working through shuttle diplomacy, where we go and hear party A, then we continue to party B, create a common ground to bring both parties together and then begin formally the resolution process. Through this program, we saw conflict, and so there was a shift. We wanted to go from being reactive, where there is conflict, mediating it, to becoming proactive. How do we limit the rise of conflict in society? And so we established the Women's Empowerment Program, seeing a lot of conflict relating to women's rights in a patriarchal society, focusing on inheritance, focusing on domestic violence and abuse, focusing on women's equitable participation in socio-economic and political life. Then continued on to youth programming. Palestine is a very young country with 70% of our population under the age of 30. That means it's a very impassioned society, and there's great potential there that can be activated. But part of this fragmentation meant that Palestinian youth, especially, did not look to their future in Palestine for security, but instead looked abroad, whether that be in the Gulf oil-rich countries in the Arab world, or whether that be in the West, across Europe and the North Americas. 87% of our youth wish to immigrate, both temporarily and permanently, for a better life. And so that meant youth were leaving civil society. And so WIAM was part of bringing that message of hope to youth so that they can feel that they have a sense of belonging to the Palestinian community and so that they may contribute to it. And so establishing programs where we talk about identity, where we talk about trauma, where we talk about war, and where we talk about ourselves not just as Palestinians or people from the West Bank specifically here, but also as global citizens. And then we worked with children. The area that WIAM is situated in has very high rates and incidences of violence. And so when we talk about children, we're talking about a population that is mostly and largely traumatized, with over 95% of the children in the area experiencing some form of trauma, experiencing violence through rubber bullets, tear gas, and a large array of different forms of violence. And so what WIAM tried to do is create programming that targets trauma coping, not yet trauma healing, because we are in CTSD instead of PTSD. We are in that continuous traumatic stress disorder as the trauma is continuously being accumulated. And so the aim of the programming is to establish programming that allows children, youth, all members of society to lead lives that are based on their aspirations and their actions instead of being limited by the trauma that they've accumulated. And then we have a bunch of other programs, but they fall under the umbrella of citizen diplomacy, where we speak about how to use nonviolence, creative resistance, and how we may use society, how we may enter community to establish civil society movements, grassroots movements that enable us to build towards more inclusive and accepting communities. And maybe I'll pause here because I see Zugbi is back on, and I'll give him the mic.
Hello, it is great to be with you. It is uplifting to see a good number of people care and would like to hear the voices that has no voice. It is powerful to see this kind of transnational community. I appreciate that. And my wife is next to me, Sandra Elaine, and sends her greetings. And thank you for being with us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I follow what Tariq was saying, and this is where we am. We decided, instead of cursing darkness, to light a humble candle, because we don't see any progress on the peace process. We try to empower our walk and talk of nonviolence, peace building, interfaith dialogue, cultural dialogue, and also to respond to the needs of the community. What we are witnessing now on the ground is genocide. 365 square kilometers is Gaza Strip, and almost 70% of the population became again refugees. There were 70% of them refugees in 1948, and now as a result of the attack of the Israeli troops on Gaza, again another almost 70% of those who were in Gaza became refugees internally, and most of them are gathered in Rafah. And actually, the Israeli troops are going to wage a wide-scale war against those civilians. And as you know, almost 100,000 Palestinians were killed and wounded. 70% of them are women and children. What this kind of attack on our people means? That means the Israeli government, which is the most right-wing government, would like to see Gaza empty, and they are embarking on ethnic cleansing for cheap gas and cheap oil. And the only way to do it is to have ethnic cleansing, at least beginning from the north and then to the south with the borders of Egypt. But I tell you again, what is happening now is not healthy at all for any future coexistence. The right wing in Israel is maximized, and it has more power and more energy. And thus, the Israeli attack on Gaza, in a way or another, assassinates interfaith dialogue, and to tell the whole world that interfaith dialogue is not going to happen, and either we see right-wing Jews or very right-wing government who will do whatever they want, and the whole world is silent. And this will kill any future for coexistence between the Palestinians and the Israelis. That doesn't mean only the work of Israeli troops in Gaza, also in the West Bank. Every day we hear more soldiers in the streets, more people are killed, more people are assassinated, more land is confiscated, more settlements are built. People are not able to go to Jerusalem. And it is the day of Lent for Christians, for Easter. And I cannot live my faith. I cannot feel that I'm in Easter without going to Jerusalem, because every spot in Jerusalem tells me about Easter. Every day of the week, we have prayers commemorating events happened in the old city of Jerusalem. So, and also it is the month for Muslims for Holy Ramadan, and many of them are not allowed to be there. So there is a kind of denial of religious freedom and religious practicing your own religion. This is really not healthy at all. So in a way or another, what is happening now, it's choking hope. And our people live in a situation where they feel they are hopeless and helpless, because the whole world is not paying attention, is not able to have a ceasefire. The Western democracies are not moving and pressuring Israel, let alone United States is impotent to do anything for that. The 57 Muslim and Arab countries are not able even to pass a bottle of water to the thirsty people in Gaza, or a sack of rice to the hungry families who are going to dying from famine. And this is really, so dialogue is frozen, negotiation is stifled, and so there is no trust, there is no confidence in any political approach or political movement. And I believe, and you know it, that as Palestinians, we live the double standard of the power to be. Double standard. Look what happened in Ukraine. The whole world jumped to arm Ukraine, to provide them with weapons, with money, with honey, and with the UN resolutions, one resolution after the other. And they want to implement it. And they call it freedom fighters. The Palestinians who even struggle non-violently, they call them terrorists. So, and the UN is impotent now, has no teeth at all. So I don't know where we can have hope. I believe, to be frank with you, yes, we are not expecting anything more from the world. And I know that Israel will continue with its war against Gaza. They will go into Rafah, which has at least 1,400,000 people in very small area. Probably they want to transfer them to Egypt, or through a new approach through the shore that United States is promising to build, to bring more people in ships and transfer them. I would like probably to stop, even to open the floor for Tariq or for your questions. I think what is needed now, we need a quick ceasefire. We need to have a jump start of the peace process. And the only power that could pressure Israel is the United States. And the only factor that really could impact the United States foreign policy, people like you, people of faith, people of courage, people of nonviolence, and I believe including the Jewish Voices for Peace, you all together could really pressure the United States government to exert pressure on Israel to have a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire, otherwise we will see a famine, we will see more genocide, will not move anywhere else. And this will not give any future for any interfaith dialogue, for any peace process, for any trust or confidence. I couldn't believe that those who are killed in Gaza, the 31,500 Palestinians, if any remnants of their family will trust any Israeli or trust the world. And the other 70,000, given that the hospitals are not functioning, lack of medicine, lack of food, I don't know how we can live. The only hope is through God, through you, because you are the renewable source of hope for us. I stop here.
Okay.
Maybe Elaine or Tariq, or any question.
May, before there's a question, say something very brief. I think it's very important that we are coming in from this reality of pain, this reality of suffering. But as was said, we still need hope, and we're still growing hope. And as was said, you are part of this hope. We know how the political reality in the US has been very difficult recently, how people are fragmented, how there are many people in one of the richest nations in the world, in the US, who are in need of many services. And yet we see on a Sunday morning, you are here listening to our depressing stories. You are here bearing witness to the suffering, to the realities that we are living. And we hope that this witness will also translate into further and continued action through your churches, through your communities, through your friendships. And with this, I think we want to also focus on the message of WeAm, which is this message of hope. WeAm operates through many philosophies and ideologies, some of them which are promoted, which are supported, which are inspired by the teaching of Jesus and the Bible. And one of these is that we do believe in transformation. In the New Testament, it talks about Zacchaeus. And if you come to the land, if you come to Palestine, you can go to the sycamore tree in Jericho. But we see this transformation happen where Zacchaeus went from someone who was stealing from the people, who was very well hated, to someone who invited Jesus to dinner. And then we see this transformation and became a very generous man, giving 4 times as much as he took to the people. And that is the same transformation here that we are looking for. We see the Israeli state in its current reality as an occupier, as an oppressor, not just of Palestinians, but of its own people. When we talk about the high suicide rates in Israel, specifically for soldiers engaged in the border and within the Palestinian territories and within the Israeli prison and civil administration systems that target Palestinians. We also talk about collective responsibility. There is the story in the Bible with this woman who is and she touches the garment of Jesus. There, Jesus says, "You are transformed, you are healed because of your faith." Conversely, we have the story of the layman who's being carried by 4 people. The house is crowded, they can't get into the house. And so they're forced to the roof of the house where they take apart the bricks of the house and lay this layman in front of Jesus. And Jesus here says, "You are healed because of their faith," telling us that we do have power as a collective to implement and be a source of good for both the individual and the community at large. And so we hope that it is through these conversations, through these talks, through opening our hearts to each other, to embracing the image and spirit of God, which we were all born in as humans of this very diverse, pluralistic world, that we are able to implement change effectively for the better of everyone.
All right. Who would like to start with the question? Seeing none, I'll start. Zugby, I was intrigued that you served on the Bethlehem City Council. What were the challenge, opportunities, joy, and despair of doing that?
Did you hear it?
Zugby, are you on mute? Did you hear my question?
It looks like he may have lost internet connection.
That's the trouble. Well, Tariq, could you answer that question for your father? You probably have discussed it many times with him.
Sure, I think, let me just make sure that he isn't available. Okay, yes, sure. Well, of course, I would not be able to answer in the same way that he would, so I hope you will forgive me for that. But I think there were plenty.
Yes,
There he is.
I have joy in serving in the city council. As Jesus said, I have come to serve and not to be served. And through that, I was able to be more in touch with the people from different backgrounds, from various education, from different mentalities and cultures, I would like. Although we are Palestinians, but there are semi-cultures here and there. So I was able, but of course there are challenges because the city council only has to serve within the city borders, but we are not having any power over garbage collection, where to throw the garbage, because it is under the Israeli control. We are not able to provide water whenever we want to provide for the people, because Israel is in control of the water. 90% of our water from the aquifers is taken by the Israelis. So there are more limits on our city, especially the area next to the wall. And the Israeli is in control, who can build around that wall, who can move. And as you know, we are divided in areas A, B, C. But of course, nowadays there is no A, there is no B, there is no C. All of it under Israel. But in that time, we were able to function in Area A and to have civil services in Area B. But Israel is in control of Area C. And as you know, almost 60% of the West Bank has been under Area C, under the Israeli control for security and supposedly for services. So there are many challenges. And of course, there's a control over the money influx from other countries, from other cities in the world towards Bethlehem. And Bethlehem really becomes smaller and smaller. And but we have a lot of diversity in the city. And in Bethlehem, there are 3 refugee camps, and there are people from all over the world living through the monasteries and the churches and church-related organization. Besides, we have lots of international presence in Bethlehem area. So in a way or another, it is an example of coexistence and people from celebrating the differences rather than we kill each other because we are different.
I am curious, with all the developments on the West Bank and everything else, is a two-state solution a possibility anymore?
I believe we struggle for two-state solution, despite the fact I believe at the end we should have one binational state. But in the meantime, I think Israel does not recognize our rights, whether in one state or two states. They don't want to see us. They don't want to give us any human rights. For example, in the West Bank, there are at least 600 checkpoints. We cannot travel freely. Nowadays, our freedom is contained in Bethlehem. We used to go to other parts of the West Bank. In the past, we used to go to the Gaza or to the north. I don't know what will happen during Easter. Will the Israeli give the Palestinians in the West Bank a pass to go to the Holy Sepulchre or to the Stations of the Cross or to celebrate Easter in Jerusalem or not? So it is really, we are living in Pentustans or Palestines, in small reservations. So this is where we are and what happened. But at the meantime, I think Israel made it clear that doesn't want to see the Palestinians, whether in one state or two-state solution. Tariq, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would add to that the two-state solution is theoretically possible, but it is not feasible as it relates to building equity. At the moment, Israel is in control of all of the borders. And even for me, I am currently in the US, I am in Michigan. For me to have left my home of Bethlehem to come to Michigan, I was forced to go through Israeli-controlled border control, in which Israel and not the Palestinian Authority is the one that has the say in whether I'm able to leave or return to my home country or to my home city of Bethlehem. And so there are many models in which there are solutions or which there are pathways to peace, but none of which that are based on the current reality, because we have a reality where the Israeli average person is at the top under legislation. They only fall under civil Israeli law, whereas the Palestinian, if they have an Israeli citizenship, also fall under civil law. Then we have a group of citizenless Palestinians who are living in Jerusalem under permanent and temporary residency, and they are considered immigrants under the Israeli law. Then you have the Palestinians of the West Bank and Gaza Strip that directly fall under Israeli military law and do not have access to Israeli civilian law, while their counterparts, some of the illegal Israeli settlers living on Palestinian land in the West Bank, fall under Israeli civil law. And so to be able to work towards any viable peace solution, whether it falls under a two-state or one-state umbrella, we require maybe three essential things. The first is that there is a law and a system of equity and equality under the law. That means that a Palestinian, like an Israeli, like an American, like any person, wherever they may come from, or under which ethnicity, nationality, or race they belong to, would have equal rights and have those rights protected under the law. The second part of it, and this is especially important to Palestinians who do not have this right at the moment, that there must be equal right to the entirety of the land. As Christians, we want to visit the Galilee, we want to visit Jerusalem, we want to walk throughout the land that our ancestors have had such a long and unique history in, but we also want to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. For our Muslim brothers and sisters, they also wish to visit Jerusalem and wish to visit the entirety of the land. Our Palestinian heritage is very rich in stories, in poems about our trees, about our land, and these are regional. So we sing about the lemons, the oranges that come from what is now known as Jaffa, which is under Israel, but used to be under Palestinian rule, used to be where Palestinians used to live. Now there's only a select few Palestinians living there. And then finally, the third component is that there must be a system of reconciliation that is based in truth and in justice. At the moment, and especially if you watch US media, when they talk about what's happening in Gaza, it's oftentimes posited and situated in a logical framework that blames Palestinians. And for us, the Palestinians living on the ground, we know what came before October 7th. We know how many Palestinians were killed on October 6th and October 5th, and how many Palestinians have been killed, their lives destroyed, their homes destroyed, some whole communities, villages completely erased off the ground since 1948. And if we fail to recognize this history of grievances and suffering, then we fall into continuing to keep Palestinians in that cycle of violence. And worse, adding insult to injury, we blame them for being stuck in that cycle of violence that they are placed under and have no sovereignty in.
I have the microphone. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I think that they say I could move to a different location. Where would be a good one? Right here. I think all of us can feel when you talk the hurt and the suffering that you've experienced over the years. My family and I were in Jerusalem for 30 years ago, and it seems like not much has changed in those past 30 years. Now, I wonder, right now we are told through our news system that Hamas is the problem. Are there leaders among the Palestinians that would be like yourself, that could take a position of leadership that would not be a violent position, but a nonviolent position, but yet would be caring for. Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, won't get rid of squeaking if you can move up, John said.
Yes,
I don't know if there's any
I
good.
think
Good, that's okay.
we have good and charismatic leaders always among the Palestinians from different generations. And many of them are still in prison. Some are deported and some are still alive, but couldn't do anything because of the politics of the Israeli government. I think most Palestinians adhere to nonviolence. You know, in their life, in daily struggle, whether they are farmers, whether they are students, whether they are family members having their own businesses. But the problem is the Israeli government is not encouraging or responding to the needs of the Palestinians who are calling for coexistence. In a way or another, those moderate voices, Israel in the past used to assassinate them and leave those who are calling for more extremism. And the Palestinians nowadays, as a result of October 7 attack from the Israeli side, whether Palestinians started or as this a reaction of the Israeli side, they will tell you if Martin Luther King was the Minister of Interior, Gandhi is the Prime Minister, Mother Teresa is the Social Minister, Israel is not interested in having peace and coexistence with us. I believe Palestinians have resorted to nonviolence, to the 300, 400 ways of nonviolence that Martin Luther King or Gandhi or Gene Sharp talked about it, or all the ways that the civil rights movement and the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa used, and we are using it. The problem is might makes it right according to the Israelis. I think what is needed now, again, to have a ceasefire and to have a jump start in the peace process and to have really a third party who is a neutral, who is just, and who is abiding with international humanitarian law and recognition of the rights of people to self-determination and statehood.
If I may add to that answer, echoing a lot of what has been said, the leaders are here, the leaders have been here, and the leaders have become a security issue for Israel. When we speak about the person who was speaking before me, Zugbi, he is one of the people who has been in and out of the Israeli administrative detention centers, never charged with anything, but taken, and sometimes for extended periods of time. And so the issue here is that anything that weakens Israel's interests is securitized and becomes a security threat. And then the logical framework comes afterwards to make sure that these people are seen or framed in a light that allows Israel to deny them their freedoms, their rights, and their ability to lead and transform society. And a bit more literal, the future leaders are also here, and we see them under the rubble in Gaza. When we talk about the children, generations of Palestinians who now will no longer have the right to lead because their lives have been cut short. When we talk about the West Bank, we also talk about the matrix of control and the systems of fear. My mother is one of many families in the Palestinian territories who doesn't have the right to live long-term with their family. When she asked at the Israeli airport before she was denied and banned, she said, "Why am I receiving this treatment? It seems like this is special." And the Israeli soldier who would have been 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, a younger fellow, just very simply responded, "You married a Palestinian." But for my family and I, we begin to do calculations and accounting. Is my mother in the position she's in because we've spoken out against the Israeli illegal occupation, and we have called for justice, we have called for reformation, called for them to recognize and protect civilian lives and rights? Or is this simply part of the Israeli policy in which there is no room to see individuals, but people are simply treated like numbers? And I think it's also important when we talk about Hamas specifically to remember and recognize that Israel trained and created Hamas so that they can divide a very unified secular Palestinian political movement in the 80s under the umbrella of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. And so this is similar to the state of Afghanistan, with the US creating and training some of the parties there so that they may fight the Soviets and then engaging in warfare with them themselves. And so what we need is for interests, especially oppressive interests, and maybe adding to this non-peace and justice founded Western interests, to be able to allow the Palestinian people to have sovereignty, to have independence. And this is the most important part, to be able to say without a doubt, without hesitation, that regardless of whether there is a Palestinian leader that is emerging, no people deserves to live under occupation, no people deserves to be genocided, and Israel can stop all of its oppression without the emergence of a clear Palestinian leader. They are not intertwined. One is a choice by the Israeli government, and one is a reality created by it. And both are suffered by the Palestinian people.
Let me clarify one point also. Thank you, Tariq. We are not in support of Hamas. And we are against any political religious party who claims that they have the power from God. They kill in the name of God, whether it's Jewish or Christian or Muslim. We are for secular national movement that coexist with others in the area. And in order, as Martin Luther King, in order to change things, we need the 3 S's: to struggle, to sacrifice, and suffer. We are doing that. And we hope that one day we'll have peace. So we need the 4 S, which is sustainable. And as we believe in nonviolence, we need the 3 dimensions of the struggle for nonviolence. The Palestinians to continue their struggle nonviolently to get rid of the occupation. Second, the pro-peace camp, pro-justice camp in Israel, although they are small in number, but they are a ray of hope, to have a preventive approach of nonviolence to help their government get rid of the occupied territories. And the third dimension, people like you, third party, UN, church, faith-based organization, who will empower the weak, but bring the strong to their senses. We are not interested to bring the strong to their knees, because we believe in restorative justice, which is the core of nonviolence, that redresses the wrongs rather than avenging it.
I want to thank you for allowing delegations from the states to come to the center when they are over, to bring back messages to Washington, D.C. I saw that the Indiana Center for Middle East Peace was over there recently. They went to D.C., but most recently, I saw a photo where David Lapjost was there with a bunch of international leaders. And David is special to our group because he's married to Sophie, and we kind of consider part of the Mennonite, College Mennonite people. They're part of us and we support them. So thank you for your work for allowing international and national visitors to come over, because the more we can be together and learn, maybe we'll be more effective when we come back to DC and to our leaders to help them have any idea what to do. Also, didn't your daughter Marcel room with Sophie at Goshen College?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another connection. Yeah.
And yes, we really would like to again invite you again, and we say we repent the 2,000 years ago mistake or sin when we say there is no room in the inn. There are plenty rooms in the inn. Come and see and witness and reflect and act. We love to take you to see the holy places, holy stones. We would like to let you meet the living stones and to be introduced to the rolling stones of the socioeconomic political conditions.
Come up.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Is there any chance that things will change when Benjamin Netanyahu is gone? I know there's increasing opposition to him. He's leading a very right-wing part of Israel. If that were gone, could things improve? Thank you, John.
I think there is hope. If he moves away, things will be better. But at the same time, without the American intervention, there's nothing going to happen. We need American to exert pressure, at least to link the aid to human rights and to stop supporting Israel with weapons. The problem with Israel, whether right-wing or left-wing, whether Likud or Labor or all these new parties, United States has a great relationship with Israel based on entity, not based on the political regime. But again, I think we will never give up hope. I believe there will be hope if Netanyahu will go. At least the world will see that their pressure is very productive. But again, I believe the Jewish voices of peace, the faith-based voices like you and others, could really create a better atmosphere for peace talks, for jumpstart the peace process, and stop the military aid to Israel, and to link all the aid to human rights, records.
Briefly to that, I think it's important to recognize that Netanyahu is a person who is taking advantage of structural inequity and inequality. Netanyahu is not alone in his extremist ideologies. In fact, over 90% of the Israeli government holds them in one form or another. But what Netanyahu is he's currently being scapegoated to represent the whole of Israel because the evidence is surmounting and the evidence is quite clear. And so I think when we talk about what can be removed to create pathways, we can remove US unconditional military aid and support for Israel. We can remove the US's continuous use and abuse of its veto privileges in the United Nations. And echoing what was said, we can empower both Palestinian, Israeli, and international communities that are based in peace and justice, such as Bethlehem in Israel, which is an Israeli human rights organization that has called this occupation, that has called this apartheid, and that has called for a ceasefire. And we can continue to empower these voices and again enter into these honest conversations where we say there is another way. Let us place Israeli security, Jewish security, somewhere where it can be preserved, but let us also understand that no security has or will ever truly come from oppressing another people. And let that be the basis and foundation of moving forward and creating a pathway so that we are able to establish processes of peace and justice building.
Thank you. And Rebecca, you have your hand up and you may have the last question.
Thank you. I wrote the question into the chat. If you want to read it there, our guests on Zoom, but first of all, I wanted to thank you for your clear messages to us this morning. And I want you to know that we're hearing your pain and suffering, and we are thinking about how we can respond to that. My question is, and you spoke to it just briefly now, about the variety of responses that I'm imagining are happening amongst the Israeli people in the face of the dominating force of the Israeli army. Are some Israelis responding to Palestine in compassionate and supportive ways? And I think of Jewish Voices for Peace in the US context. Can you tell us more about similar groups at work within Israel and how we might be supportive or aware of them?
Yes, I believe there are. And a few days ago, some Israeli peace activists tried to bring some food to Gaza, but the Israeli authorities didn't allow them. So there are Yesh Gevul, New Profile, Women in Black. There are good number. Yes, they are small in numbers, but they are a ray of hope. I think we need them, and we need to see them empowered. And actually, we are tipping our hat for the Jewish Voices for Peace in the States and everywhere, because they are a voice of the voiceless, and they are prophetic voice with a prophetic action. And really, I stand, humble in front of all your movement, the Mennonites and the faith-based TMAP, Churches for Middle East Peace, the Presbyterian Peacemakers, and different churches, and the Methodists in the States, who are really struggling hard to tell the American administration a ceasefire, peace now, and so on. And really, yes, as Palestinians, we are empowered by your empathy, by your compassion, by your support. And as we are going next week to be in the Holy Week of Easter, passing the Via Dolorosa, the Stations of the Cross, every day, every action is one of the 14 Stations of the Cross. And always remembered and reminded that when we go to the Holy Sepulchre, the tomb is empty and Christ is resurrected. And we believe that one day will be resurrected and we will overcome injustice. And there will be, as Tariq said, believing in transformation, that the cross will be the road to salvation and coexistence. And we feel that the people of the Middle East will live together side by side, despite of all the extremists, despite of all the fundamentalists, despite of the racists. And therefore, victory is going to happen for humanity, no matter how long will be the oppression, how long will be the occupation. We would like to see an end to it and to see that we coexist rather than kill each other.
Thank you for your time. We share your sadness and hope and pray that things will get better. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you for having us.